What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the Bombs and Birdies podcast. Today, we're going to be discussing the tournament round that I just recently played, trying to qualify for the Canadian Open. It's been my first round, professional round or qualifying round in the last 6 years that I've done. So we have Logan here with me, and we're gonna dive right into my experience and obviously his experience on the back end, because I know you were watching, or at least keeping up with the scoreboard, which was really cool and nice to see. But let's dive right in. So, qualifying for the Canadian Open happens in a couple stages, but the stages, the route that I took was you have a regional 18 holes, and they take the top 15% with the low medalists getting right into the Canadian Open. And then if you place in the top 15% outside of that, then obviously you make it to the sectional, which is actually the Monday qualifier. And that was going to be happening at Coppenwood this year, I was going to be super stoked if I was going to be able to play there. It's a really sick track. So the day kind of rounded out. It was supposed to be really, really shitty weather. It was supposed to be, it was 20 degrees the last couple days beforehand, and then it went right down to 5 degrees. It was going to be 20K winds gusting up to 26 to 30 clicks. And the golf course, they were tipping us all the way out at 7,151 yards. So let's just round up and say 7,200 yards. One of the longer golf courses that we play, fairly wide open. And I chose this golf course because it's fairly forgiving off the tee, at least for me. And I did it as a test to see, okay, like I've been chasing speed for the last 2 or 3 years now. And I wanted to see, one, how I could handle myself under pressure again, not playing an event in basically 6 years plus. And I wanted to see what it would be like to stack up my game with the amount of speed that I've gained. So, maybe you could talk about just really quickly, like what was your takeaway, at least like kind of watching, and because you were behind the scenes, I know you were, obviously I had a caddy there, but you were kind of scrolling, and we have a couple friends that were trying to qualify as well. So maybe you could discuss that before we kind of dive in.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know Sarah and my girlfriend and I were at home watching you and Branson all day, and we saw that you guys were both right on the cusp there. Branson was obviously at even, which it looked like the cut was going to be right at even, and you were just like one stroke off of the cut line all day. But we're like, if there's one guy who can go out there and make some birdies, it's gonna be Colton, right?
Yeah it was kind of stressful because, like, I mean, I haven't played an event in almost 6 years, so, or at least an individual stroke play event in almost 6 years. So it was really cool to kind of put that to the test. And obviously my social media has kind of blown up over the last few years. So I was getting some looks on the range, guys that don't know me, guys that do know me. So it's kind of cool in that respect. But stepping up to that first tee shot, I was kind of glad it was a par 5.
Yeah.
To be honest, it was fairly open. It was about 550 yard par 5. For the most part, it was like a softer dog leg left. It was about there was a bunker that covered the dog leg. So I was like, when I played the practice round, I hit driver to see where it would be. And I actually took the safe line out to the right and went through the fairway like 40, 50 yards onto the 9th hole.
Wow.
So I had a little bit of a weirder layup. It is the miss, but there's a lot of mulch down there, and the way that the course was set up, I was like, you know what? I was shaking in my boots over that first tee shot, and
really?
I actually pulled 2-iron off the tee. So it was 550 yards straight into it, like a 20K wind. And I pulled 2-iron, which I didn't plan to do, and it was a last-minute decision. And one of my good friends, and Brian Hadley, was behind me. He was in the group behind us, and I absolutely torched this 2-iron. Like, we walked up there, and I had about 250 yards maybe.
Wow.
Left. So it was pretty cool to see a 300-yard ball right off the right out the chute. And he was like, well, that's the only 200, or that's the only 300 2-iron you're going to see off the first
Seriously.
hole. Off the first hole today. So it was pretty cool. So I got off to a good start. I was playing very, very, very safe. For about 90% of the round. There was no reason to try to play super aggressive the way they had the pin set up. It was really, really challenging. And but having that strength kind of in the back end, or the speed in the back end, just allowed me to play a little bit freer, where I could take 2-iron off the tee and I wasn't forced to hit driver.
Absolutely.
I was able to hit 5-iron and 2-irons off some of the tees, and having the ability to have 50-yard fairways left and right just kind of made it a little bit easier, at least for me, to just have some confidence. Even if I was nervous, I was like, okay, well, I can miss it here, I can miss it there. I was good. So I got off to a pretty decent start. Late, I had like 250 yards in. It was a super tight green. Just played for percentages and laid up, hit a wedge, 2-putted from 20 feet, and kind of moved on to the next hole, which was a great start for me. I wanted to make sure that I got off to a good start.
Yeah.
The second hole was a little bit longer. It was almost 500 yards straight into the wind. It was about 470 from the back tees, and hit a great drive. Had a gap wedge in. Again, the pin was essentially 3 paces off the right. If you missed the green right, it was absolute like double bogey at best. So just hit it in the center of the green. Almost made the 35 footer, lipped out, gave me a slider coming back about 4 feet and missed it, unfortunately. So just a quick 3-putt out of the gates.
Yeah.
But they had the greens pretty cooking from when we played in the practice round, because I know when Branson and I played in the practice round, it was a little bit softer, and then they kind of started to speed it up, and then from there, just kind of cruise control, I guess you could say. I was coming up to a par 3, hit the green, like aimed way left of the flag stick.
Yeah.
Again, 2-putted like really well. Par 5, or sorry, 5th hole, par 4. Hit a good tee shot, had like 80 yards in. And one of the things that I was kind of struggling with, and we talked about this on the phone after, was that the 90% of the game, or how I play golf now, is basically inside of 150 yards. I don't have too many clubs that are kind of in that range.
Like how often would you be hitting a club from like, like a long iron even into a green? It'd be only par 5s, really.
I mean, like we're gonna get to this too. Like even on the 7th hole, it played 210. And we had a little bit of a tailwind, and I hit 9-iron.
Wow.
Like it was, like, it's especially for how the golf course was, laid out. It just wasn't. Well, we talked about this on the phone after. The longest club I had into a hole on that day was 8-iron, and that was because I was going for a par 5 and 2.
That's so crazy. Yeah. So even the par 5s, you're still hitting short irons into them.
Yeah. So either I would hit 2-iron off the tee to lay up and put myself in position, or I would hit driver, and hopefully I got it in a good enough spot where I could go for it. But in which case it was just a little off, and my wedge game has been improving, but obviously tournament under pressure, not trusting it, haven't played a lot of events, so I was kind of like wincing at a couple, and I wasn't completely trusting it. So I was hitting it fine, but I wasn't hitting it close enough to give myself opportunities to actually capitalize. So I had a lot of 25, 30 footers all day, and just kind of 2-putting the shit out of the golf course, essentially. Yeah. So it was kind of boring golf, but at the end of the day, like that's when in tournament golf, it should be very, very stress free.
Absolutely.
There's not too many green light flags out there, and on a day like that with the wind blowing, like percentage wise, from even just a tour player or a scratch player for that example, like percentage wise, you're only making about 2 to 3 birdies.
Yeah.
Like if you have a great day, obviously you make a couple more that you probably shouldn't make, but for the most part, percentage wise, I put myself in positions enough time to make a few, and I got lucky. So I made the turn. I made the turn at 1 over. So I made 1 bogey on 2, and I just made 7 pars straight after that, which was pretty stress-free.
Yeah.
I think I hit 7 greens on the front, 7 or 8 greens on the front. So like ball striking wise, I was fine.
Yeah.
I just wasn't really hitting it close enough. And then making the turn on the back 9, I was like, okay, like we're still in this. I know the cut line is going to be in and around even par, especially for the conditions that we had. And then kind of hit a weird one on 10. The wind kind of flipped from the practice round. So actually a lot of the adjustment playing from the practice round was weird, because I hit a lot of drivers in the practice round, even on shorter par 4s, because of the wind flip.
Yeah.
And then when the wind flipped to a north wind to a west wind, or a west wind to a north wind, I didn't have to play as aggressive, taking a half a head cover. I could basically just hit 2-iron off the tee, and kind of almost actually hit it off the hosel, to be honest. And
oh, really?
Yeah, I was like,
wow.
It was like basically like a downhill par 4 on the 10th hole. You had to hit it short of the water, because you're basically a forced layup. And then I hit, I think I hit 2-iron. And I had about 155 yards in. It was a back left pin. You couldn't miss it left.
Yeah.
I was in the rough. I had a great lie. And I just choked down on a pitching wedge and just made sure that if I cut it off of the pin, it would cover the water, but also stay short of going long. So I'd have an easy 2-putt straight up the hill. And of course, rough grabbed it, yanked it, missed it in the one spot you can't miss it on the golf course. But actually made an incredible par save from the collection area. It was kind of like a lower below the tier, and then everything ran away from the pin. So left it short in the fringe, and then made like a 15-foot downhill slider for par, which was kind of massive.
Yeah.
And then stepping onto the hardest hole on the golf course, in my personal opinion, was number 12, where it was 11. It was about a 200. It played 195 back pin, double tier green, if you miss the green, anything short and or right, you're in the water.
Yeah.
And then left, 5 feet left of the green was trees, but everything funneled like towards the pin and the water.
Okay.
So most guys would bail out left, even hitting it in the trees. It would just like, because the hill was so steep,
Yeah.
it would kind of funnel down to the flagstick, and I hit probably one of the best 8-irons I've ever hit in my life. Landed in the fringe, and it trickled down. I picked up my tee, walked back to my caddy, handed the club back, and the guys like started to get excited, and I was like, "Yo, like, what the fuck are you talking about?" And they're like, "I think it's in."
Oh.
And I was like, "Okay, well, I don't see it." So they got the rangefinders out because the way where the pin was, it was kind of tucked in the shadows. And it ended up being legitimately like one revolution from like falling in.
Oh my god!
So that would have been
epic.
That would have been epic. So like, I hadn't really pulled. For those of you who don't know, I like to play. You know that I like to play a little bit of a cut, so I like to move the ball left to right, and I hadn't missed a shot left until 10. So I was confident that like I was like, okay, the swing's in the right spot, the ball's not curving left, I'm hitting a lot of good shots in, and I just made a great putt on 10 to save the round basically from going in the wrong direction. I just stuffed it on 11, and I stand up on the 12 tee box, and I'm even par, and I'm like, I'm fucking right in this. And I haven't been in a position like that in probably 7-8 years.
Wow.
Right? So I was like, okay. And I got a little bit of excited, and this is kind of where having reps in tournament golf is so important. I got a little bit of excited, and my caddy's like, "Hey, is it driver?" Because he hadn't played the golf course before. He was just a buddy of mine carrying the bag. And I was like, "Yep, 100%." And in hindsight, looking back, it probably wasn't. There was all OB up the left. If you miss the fairway left, you're screwed. You had the end of the earth right, and there was a bunker covering the if I hit driver well, I would have had about 60 to 80 yards in.
Yeah.
And would have been a green light. It was fairly wide fairway, but if you missed the fairway, or even in the center right part of the fairway, there was a huge pot bunker, which I wasn't even looking at. And then right of that was fine. It was just another hole. But left was out of bounds. They had like a fence up for, they were doing some construction or whatever. And for the first time in my whole life, I chunked a driver.
Oh my God.
So I stood up on the tee. I backed off the tee shot once, and it felt fine. Like I was a little bit nervous, and then I tried to. Basically, my coach and I have been practicing with shorter tees.
Okay.
The reason for that is because when I do long drive and I teed up really high, I actually create too much spine tilt, and my swing direction gets too far to the right.
Yeah,
so
gotcha.
It's hard for me to hit cuts that way.
Yeah.
So we've been teeing down lower, and it's actually created a little bit of a neutral or negative angle of attack, which I can be okay with.
That's okay.
Because I have speed to burn.
Yeah.
So I was basically trying to hit like this low squeeze driver out there, and literally chunked it and snap hooked it out of bounds.
No.
So I'm like, oh fuck. So had to recoup, hit another tee shot, blasted it way right on purpose just to make sure that I was in play. Looking back, it was probably a 2-iron off the tee. But actually hit it to 15 feet and lipped out for bogey.
Wow.
Which would have been probably one of the better bogeys I've ever made in my life. And we had 6 holes left, and I was like, okay, we have to probably get at least 1 to 2 shots back to even have a shot.
Yeah.
And stepping onto 13 was a par 5, which was great. So I had a little bit of steam from the double bogey coming off of 12, and probably hit like, I don't know, I probably swung like as hard as I possibly could and pumped this driver. And it was, I forget how long the hole was, but it was 554 into like a soft, maybe like 15-20K hurt off the right. And I flighted this driver out there, and I literally had 195 yards in.
Wow.
So I don't know how far that is, but, and I hit 8-iron into like the soft cut wind, and I had 25 feet and two putt for birdie. So I'm like kind of right back. Hit a good shot on the par 3 in the next hole, had a 15-footer, misjudged. I was struggling with the greens like all day. I wasn't quite giving myself enough chances to make it. I was either 4 feet long, 4 feet short, right on it, and I was kind of struggling with pace, which is something I don't normally struggle with.
No, it's usually very good.
It's usually you play with me enough where like it's usually pretty good. And 3-putted again, so I kind of went like double, made it back with the birdie, and then a 3-putt bogey. And I was like, so I was just like so much of I tried to keep my emotions fairly stable, but it's like low, high, low, high, low, high. And then we have 4 holes left. 2 of them are really hard. Sorry, the last 3 holes are fairly challenging. And then we had a shorter hole on 15, and I just pinched a 2-iron out there, had 80 yards, and then I left it like 30 feet short. I was right in the center of the fairway. There's nothing short of the green. Pins at the back. Didn't really want to hit what I knew I needed to hit. I wanted to essentially just take what I knew would get at least get on the green, worst case scenario, and that comes with practice. I wasn't super confident in it and left it 30 feet short. Again, missed opportunity, 2-putt, make par. And then I stepped onto 16, laced a 2-iron out there, had 140 yards in. Again, kind of a chicken shit golf swing. Gave myself another 25-footer, 2-putt. 17 was there was so much guessing on 17 because I hit driver in the practice round. I had 50 yards in.
Okay.
And it's like a 460 hole.
Wow.
So we had a lot of tailwind.
Yeah.
And Branson and I both hit driver in the practice round. We were side by each. We had literally 50, 60 yards in. So, but where the pin was, they tucked it over the bunker. So I was like, you have to have a full club in. But I wasn't sure if 2-iron was going to give me anything inside of about 150 yards. Which was the mistake of not hitting in the practice round.
Right, you just didn't, and when you needed to rely on it in the tournament.
Which I was hitting it good all day.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I haven't hit a bad shot with this club yet, but I was like, I know I was kind of pushing for birdie. And then, of course, it was 330 on a direct line to the trees. And then if I missed it, anything right of the trees, I was fine. And then on the right side of the hole, it was just another hole. So I essentially just got really, really nervous, and I was like, crap, if I pull this, I'm rinsed right in the trees. Yeah. So I said, fuck it. So I literally like one hand finish off this inside part of the heel, blasted it like 60 yards right, found it, got a drop out of some ground into repair, which was great. Blind shot to the green. The caddy and I did our best to kind of figure out what the yardage was. Yeah. Hit it in the bunker, short, hit an incredible bunker shot to like 4 feet, made it for par. So stepping onto the 18th hole, it's a par 5, and the way that they're redesigning the golf course, because when I played it the last time, there's no out of bounds on that hole. Yeah. So the 9th hole and the 18th hole run parallel to each other, and 18's like a softer dog leg right, but it's a forced carry. So if you miss it, and then everything kind of funnels into 9. Yeah. So if you miss it on the right side of basically if you miss the fairway right with any type of cut, it'll bounce out of bounds. Okay. So I hit it out of bounds in the practice round. So now I'm stepping onto that tee. I know I'm within a couple shots, if not right on the cut line, and I basically have to make birdie to give myself any type of a shot. Yeah. A lot of adrenaline pumping. I haven't hit a good drive in 3 holes, so I'm like, okay, I'm gonna bench the driver. Yeah. So I benched the driver, and it was 330 on a direct line to the. Because there was if you went through the fairway, there was trees, and if you cut off too much, you had to fly the bunkers, which were like 270, and I wasn't super confident with 2-iron at that point, so I just I'm just gonna take my 2-iron on a 330 line. I should be fine. I can have an easy layup and then just try to make birdie the hard way. Yeah. Pulled 2-iron just a little bit and walk up there, and I almost hit it through the tree line. So it was like a 3. So it was deep. So I tagged it. But I ended up, thankfully, the rough caught it. So it was another 300, 305 2-iron on that line. And had to hook it out of the trees a little bit. Got it back in play. I had 80 yards to a front tucked pin and hit a great wedge shot to about 10 feet. And I had both the guys in my group both laid up. And I was closer of the 3 of them. And they went make. So the one guy ricked it off the flag. Gosh. So now I'm like, okay, so and they were completely out of it, but they were 6 or 7 over at that point. So I was like, okay, if I make this putt, the cut line in my mind, based on the previous events, it might move to +1. Yep. So I was like, worst case scenario, if I make this putt, I can walk it with my head held high, and I gave it my best shot, and they went make. So I'm like, oh, the hole looks huge now to me. Absolutely, yeah. So I'm like, okay, this is in. Great line, great read. Hit my line and caught the low side of the hole and lipped out. Oh, so close, dude. So it was close, but at the end of the day, there was a lot of putts and shots that I probably shouldn't have made because I saved myself quite a few shots with the flat stick early. And I hit clubs off the tee that I would normally never hit, and it was pretty cool to see that I could play kind of a stress-free tournament round because I wasn't forced to hit shots. It was kind of oh well, if I take an aggressive line, it's kind of crazy because I've almost gained so much speed that hitting it that distance, the golf courses are not built for that. So most guys that are hitting driver, they're landing in that 300 to 320 zone and they're fine. Whereas I'm having to take lines at 350, 360, and it brings the golf course
totally different
in. so it was kind of like, well, I'm not hitting driver like perfect. If I miss this on a weird line, I'm going to run out or run into hazards or tree lines at 330.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting to have that kind of thought creep into the back of my head. But the ability to just like, okay, I'm going to hit 3-iron or 2-iron 300 yards. It's like, okay, well, now I'm hitting it next to everybody else's driver and I'm still fine.
Yeah.
I just kind of have to wait for my chances and be patient, and knowing that I can still hit driver that far was fine. And it was just kind of defeating because as soon as it lipped out, I was like, yeah, I think I'm going to miss. In my head, I thought I missed by 2.
Right.
Because I got into the scores tent and I signed the scorecard. I was like, Brad Parkins, the one of the president of Golf Canada, I was like, hey, like, what's the cut line at right now? He goes, I think it's at even. Mm-hmm. And I was like, oh, fuck. So it doesn't even matter. I'm going to be out anyway.
Yeah.
So I'm driving home and we got off the phone. And I'm driving home, and then I refresh it after about 45 minutes. I refresh the leaderboard just out of pure curiosity.
No way.
And the fucking cut line moved again. So it went from even to +1. So now I'm kicking myself. I'm like, if that putt goes in, I would have made it right on the number.
Wow.
And it at least would have given me a chance to really practice for the next like 4 weeks, like 3 to 4 weeks, and be like, okay, like I'm going to be in the Monday for the Canadian Open, and anything can happen, especially at Coppenwood. So it was kind of cool to see what kind of speed that was. I don't know what did the leaderboard look like, because you said you were refreshing it, right?
Yeah, we were refreshing it like just as we were going. I mean, we saw when you got through the front 9, I think it's the first time that your score was updated.
Came up, yeah.
And so we saw Branson was at even. The cut looked like it was at even, and you were at +1 at that time.
Yeah.
And then the next time it updated was after hole 12, and you had gone, I think, par, birdie, double, birdie.
Yeah.
And we were like, oh, man. But at this point, what we're thinking watching that is like, we'd rather see you probably make those birdies with a double than just pars, because it means like, well, this is scoreable, and like you're starting to hit them close. You're starting to give yourself chances. And, the other thing we're looking for at that point is how many par 5s do we got left?
Yeah.
Or do we, right?
Yeah.
Do we have a drivable par 4?
And we were, there was only one and it was 18.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. And it looked like maybe that was a tough hole too from the scorecard. So
yeah, I don't know. There was 2 guys that shot 5 under, which was definitely out there, 100%. We thought that 4 under, Branson and I were talking, we thought 4 under would be in the mix, but it would be on the fence. 5 under would probably do it. 6 under 100% would do it.
Yeah.
But just the way the course was laid out at 7,200 yards, like it was shooting like 68, 69. You were like, you were in 100%. And when I got back to even, and I was like, fuck, I have not been here in
so long,
almost 10 years realistically.
Yeah.
And it was just like voices start creeping in your head. You're like, I'm looking at out of bounds, and I'm like, oh fuck, I don't want to hit this left. And of course I fucking hit it left.
Oh man. It's funny because I heard this thing in sports psychology. They talk about your brain, your subconscious doesn't know the word don't.
Yes.
So if you say don't hit it in that bush, your brain just hears bush.
Yeah. So it was pretty cool. Like I was honestly, like, when I hooked it, I was kind of just like, oh shit. I wasn't like super mad or slamming clubs or whatever, like I used to when I used to play, because I was like literally playing for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Which was kind of cool. So yeah, I wanted to use it as an experiment to see if my game would hang up, if I was still kind of in the mix. I still wouldn't consider myself in the mix, at least for now. But it was kind of like, okay, well, I can play. I wouldn't say average, because it wasn't average. I played pretty decent. It was, I could play mediocre golf and like still kind of hang with these guys that have been playing full time for the last forever.
And that's where this is really cool, is because I think we've seen some storylines of maybe recently with Bryson where it's like, okay, he's an elite player, and then he chases the distance game, right? And he sort of made that crossover. And we've seen guys try to do what you're doing, but no one's really done it successfully yet. And you coming off of now being up to number 22 in the world for long drive, so sort of in that upper echelon, and trying to make the transition into professional golf, which you used to do 6 years ago. Yeah. It's just interesting to sort of have these two worlds start to merge together now, I think. And without you even working on your wedge game, without you working on really like iron striking that much in the last few years. And we know your putting's good. Yeah. But there's a difference between like being a good putter and then going and playing these tournaments and events and playing well there. So I got to ask, like, what does it look like for you to be in these tournaments again. Are you feeling like you got a calmer head than you used to? Or are you even more nervous than you used to be just because you haven't done it in so long?
That's a great fucking question. I mean, when my putting has always been a strength of mine. Like that day, I hit 14 greens, I hit 8 fairways, and I had like 29 putts. It's not like I played awful.
If you shoot, if you're putting 29 average, that's like,
well, not even that. It's like, especially for under 30 putts for hitting, like I only missed 4 greens.
Right.
And when I say I missed 4 greens, it was like barely missed 4 greens. So it was, I had a putter in my hand a lot, and I just wasn't comfortable on the greens as much. I was reading the greens great.
Yeah.
But the transition coming back, I definitely think I was calmer. I was definitely nervous.
Yeah, of course.
But I think I came back and I was I think I was a lot calmer because I knew the advantage that I had was just so astronomically like good off the tee.
Absolutely.
Because like I said, like I had wedge into 1, I had wedge into 2, I had a pitching wedge into 3, I had a 60-yard wedge into 4, I had 80 yards into 5.
That's the part that's crazy. We're talking about like if you're playing at your local muni course or your club that you're a member at, hitting driver and wedge is going to be common if we're playing like here we got a Shanty Bay or something.
Yeah, exactly.
But you're doing this from 7,200 yards, and you're making this look like someone's muni course, like they're playing from the 2 deck.
Yeah,
I mean, that's a different story. Like, if you think of guys playing 7,200 yards, you're thinking like driver, 6-iron, 5-iron into a lot of greens, and you're doing it with wedges, 9 irons and wedges.
Yeah, it was definitely cool because this is the thing, like, because I focus so much on speed, and I do attribute, like, I don't like toot my own horn very much, but like I am one of the more accurate guys at 130 miles an hour clubhead speed.
That's the crazy thing that these people don't realize. If you get the chance to play with Colton, and we were playing with some good players one day in the fall last year, it was Ben.
Yeah.
So he's
Coach Ben, yep.
a teaching pro. He's like a plus handicap.
Yep.
We were playing with Spencer, who's like around that scratch range, maybe like 4 at the very highest.
Yep.
Myself, I'm like a 9, but we were all hitting bombs, like all 3 of us all day. And then Colton's hitting it like 50 to 70 yards past us with like a 2-yard draw.
Yeah.
It was like the most accurate and the longest, which is crazy.
Yeah. It was just because my driver was on, it just allowed me. I don't think people understand the benefit of having that kind of extra gear, because everyone's like, oh, well, you drive for show, putt for dough. To a degree, that is true. But if we were to look at my stats gained off the tee, putting myself in position, and when I say in position, I mean inside of 120 yards. I think I had 6 or 7 shots inside of 120 yards, maybe even a little bit more. I have to go back and check the footage, but I had a lot of wedges in my hand, and not even full wedges at that. So it's like the shots gained off the tee, it might not look well on paper because I didn't birdie all of them, or I didn't make a lot of birdies out of them. Yeah. But the point is I gave myself statistically a better chance of doing that, because if I'm sitting, like, there's a reason why you can hit a wedge closer than you can hit a 7-iron. Because the further you are away from the hole, the dispersion of how you can play golf is just much greater. And obviously the closer you get, the less the ball has time to get offline, and the more loft you have, the less spin loft, and so on and so forth. So it was just really cool to kind of play boring and still be able to like play safe, and just not have to like, oh, okay, well, 2-putt par, 2-putt par, 2-putt par. And then when my game is like really, really on, then it's just that much better, because I'm going to have 6, 7, 8, 9 wedges, if not more, into every hole. Like, there's not too many holes like where I used to play. When I used to play professional golf, it was like, okay, 210, 220 yard golf shot, and it's like 6-5, possibly 4-iron, depending on the wind. And I'm like, holy crap, this is a long hole. Yeah. Now I'm stepping up, and like I said, the most I hit from 200 yards is 205. Like my stock 8-iron is 205. So a 200-yard par 3 is not like stressful anymore. It's like, okay, well, I just have a mid-iron.
Yeah, and there's another thing I think for a lot of people they don't see about that. And we talked about the dispersion being wider, obviously, with the longer irons. But the other thing that's crazy is that like you said, your angle coming in, the descent angle is so different, right? Yeah. And so there's some golf courses players play that's really difficult for them to hit the green because they have to roll it up there. Right. Like if I'm hitting a 5-iron into a green, I'm not going to be able to stick that on there, right? Correct. unless you got some sort of really elevated shot or something.
Yeah.
But when you're hitting a wedge into that green, it could be tucked behind a bunker. It could be in all sorts of dangerous positions, but you're able to attack it.
Yeah, just because it's like I'm able to just control the spin that much better. I'm able to control the flight that much better, where it's when you're playing that deep from that far back, it just makes the game just that much harder. So we'll see. I mean, it kind of, I know we talked about it on the phone, but it kind of gave me a little bit of light to see. It's like, okay, well, maybe I get back into a couple events and actually like get to a point where I'm comfortable playing under that type of pressure. Mm-hmm. And who knows, maybe it could be something that I transition away from long drive for a while and start to refocus back on chasing the dream of making it to the PGA Tour. And maybe it's not. We'll see. I'm going to kind of play this summer by the seat of my pants and see kind of how I feel week to week, month to month. And I know that I still have world championships at the end of the year, so I want to make sure that that's still there. Other than that, guys, I wanted to thank you guys for tuning in. If you guys are obviously tuning in on YouTube, thanks for the subscription. If you haven't, please subscribe. If you guys are tuning in on Spotify, thank you for the download. And as always, stay fast, and we'll see you for the next one.